Let's go back to basics and take a look, have a bit of a recap as to how a PCP, personal contract plan, works. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel, folks. JD here again. With all the talk of you can't get away from all of these claim companies at the moment telling you to put a claim in if you've had car finance from 2007 until 2021. So I thought it might be a good time to just do a bit of a recap. I do these videos probably every couple of years on the channel, just where we have a bit of a recap, a bit of a re-education, if you like, as to how a PCP works. I get quite a few emails from people and also friends and colleagues that I talk to who still don't really understand what they're signing up for when they take out a PCP on a car. So I thought we'll just do a very quick 5-minute video just going through some examples and the basics of how a regulated PCP agreement works. So if you're new to this channel, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. If you like what you see today, give the video a thumbs up. And also if you want to know about more content that I release, obviously subscribe and hit that bell icon so you're notified as and when I release new content. So this channel is all about car finance, hence the name, and also trying to better educate people so that you can make a better informed decision when you are looking at buying or leasing or PCPing or HPing a used or new car. So what I've got various tools which I use on the channel. We're going to be using my PCP settlement and voluntary termination calculator spreadsheet today, which you can purchase from the channel for a one-off donation of £10. If you'd like to get yourself a copy, please email me just here, and then you'll get instructions as to how you can get your hands on a copy. I also have another spreadsheet which is looking at EV salary sacrifice scheme. So if your employer is perhaps thinking of offering a salary sacrifice scheme, or if you're an employer thinking about offering a scheme to your staff, that's a really useful tool. It'll enable you to calculate net savings if you offer such a scheme. Anyway, to PCP then. So PCP, personal contract plan, essentially the best way to look at a PCP is it's exactly the same as an HP, hire purchase agreement, apart from the fact that the last payment that you make is an optional payment, I should say, and also it's normally much, much higher. So a PCP works by you purchasing a car, you pay a deposit, and then what's left is how much is financed, and then that is split up into, say, 36 payments, 48 payments, 60 payments, with the final payment normally at month 36, sometimes at month 37. That's important if you're comparing apples with apples. But it's essentially where you pay so many equal payments, and then at the end there's an optional guaranteed future value payment, sometimes known as a balloon payment. You can have a it's not really a PCP, but it's a hire purchase with a balloon payment at the end. And the main difference with that is that the balloon payment isn't guaranteed. So that if you owe if your car is worth much less and you've got a balloon payment at the end, you've kind of still got to pay that balloon payment. With a PCP, what happens is that the finance company take a punt and they basically say, okay, we think after 3 years or 4 years or whatever the length of the agreement is, we think your car is going to be worth, I don't know, let's say 40% of its value. If you get to the end of the term and your car's only worth 10% of its value, that doesn't matter. Providing you've taken reasonable care of the vehicle, there's something called the BVRLA guidelines, which you can download a copy of from Google, and that will give you a list of what they deem fair wear and tear. So it's how many scratches you can have per panel, how many chips you can have on your wheel, that kind of thing. And providing you've met that criteria and the car's worth, as I said in this example, 10% and you owe 40%, you can just hand the car back. With a balloon HP, you can't do that. So if the car's worth 10% and you owe 40%, you still got to pay the 40%. So with a PCP, it's good because you're kind of mitigating the risk of depreciation. So let's take an example on the spreadsheet here. So let's say I go to a dealer and there's a car for £25,000 and I'm going to put in a deposit of £1,000. So we'll come back to what dealer deposit contribution means in a minute. So that means that we are borrowing £24,000. Let's say the guaranteed future value at the end of, let's say, 3 years is £10,000. Okay. Option to purchase fee is negligible these days. It's usually £10 or whatever. So we'll leave that off the calculation. And let's say we start it in January 25. Now, the quoted APR. Now, this is our first bit of education, if you like. When you go to a dealer, and I don't think this happens anymore, but when I've bought cars 20 years ago, you'd get the finance manager or the dealer saying, okay, I can get you a really great rate. We can do you at 5%. And I used to think, oh, that's pretty good, 5%. Okay. Now, the first question to always ask is that flat or is it APR? And a rule of thumb is, if it's flat, you can pretty much double it to get the APR. So if you're looking at a PCP, you've been to another dealer and they're saying it's 9.9 APR, and you go to another dealer and they say, we can do you at 5%. If that's flat, more or less it's going to be 9.9, 10% APR. So the first question to always ask is this flat rate or is it APR? APR is the only way that you can accurately compare different deals, because APR is not just about interest rate, it's about other charges such as option to purchase fee, administration fee, and it also relates to the term of the agreement as well. So always make sure you're dealing in APR. So let's say we've been offered 9.9% APR and we've asked for it to be over 3 years. Now this is point number 2, and I alluded to this earlier. If you ask for an agreement based on 3 years, make sure it's 3 years and not 3 years and 1 month. And if it is 3 years and 1 month, make sure that when you're comparing it with other quotations from other dealers, that they're 3 years and 1 month. Now, the reason I say that is sometimes you'll find that you ask for a 3-year deal and it will say on your quotation 36 equal payments of X, followed by a guaranteed future value optional balloon payment in month 37. Now, you might go to another dealer and say, I want a 3-year deal, and you get the quote, and it says 35 equal payments, followed by an optional guaranteed future value balloon payment in month 36. Now, obviously, that can make quite a difference on your overall cost. So make sure if you ask for a 3-year deal, is it 36 months? Is it 37 months? If you ask for a 48-month deal, is it 48 months? Is it 49 months? And always make sure you're dealing in the same amount. So on my spreadsheet, we enter the number of equal payments. So I'm going to assume this is a 36-month agreement with 35 equal payments, month 36 with a guaranteed future value optional balloon payment. So let's put 35 equal payments. So my spreadsheet tells me, and this is a really good tool because it enables you to compare different deals. It enables you to make sure that the quote you've got from a dealer makes sense. And it, give or take £1 or so a month, it will normally give you a decent, accurate idea. That's coming out, look, at £540.38. Total amount payable. And this assumes, remember we had that term optional balloon payment, guaranteed future value, because you don't have to pay it. So you can get to the end of this case, 35 equal payments, and give the car back. But if we assume that at the end of the agreement, we're going to pay it off and buy the car, because remember the last payment is effectively where your balloon payment lies, we would have paid £29,913, excluding any admin fees and that kind of thing. So, rule number 3, and again, I think this is where a lot of people fall over and they misunderstand what they're signing up for. Even though the guaranteed future value balloon payment is optional, you are still paying interest on it. Now, I went to a dealer years ago and they convinced me that I was only really paying for the bit between the deposit and the guaranteed future value at the end. So I was only paying that bit. Now, yes, that's true. Across the 35 months in this example, yes, we are only paying that bit down, but the balloon payment at the end sits there all the time and you pay interest on it. And because you are never paying all of that down, any of that down, certainly if you don't keep the car, you've paid interest on that amount throughout the entire in this case 3 years. The best way of checking it is to go on your credit file and look at the total amount financed. Now in this case, look, we've got a £25,000 purchase fee, £1,000 deposit, a guaranteed future value optional balloon payment of £10,000. If it was true where this bit isn't actually costing you anything, the total amount on your credit file would be £14,000, which is 24 minus 10. But actually it would be 24,000. Well, actually it would be 24 plus your charges. So the total amount on your credit file in this case will be 29,913 because the interest is all added at the beginning and then you pay it down over the period. So 3 rules. Make sure you ask whether it's APR or flat rate. Make sure you check whether it's 36 equal payments and month 37 where the balloon is, or is it 35 and month 36, that kind of thing. And thirdly, make sure you understand that you are paying interest on the balloon payment, whether you pay it off or not. So at the end of a PCP, your choices are give the car back and walk away and pay nothing, pay the car off and own it, and thirdly, trade it in. And the idea, the way they sell it is, okay, your agreement at the end of this, your balloon payment is £10,000. If it's worth £11,000, you've got £1,000 deposit towards your next car. Okay, so they're your options. Now, a lot of people, I would say the majority of people who take a PCP don't ever run it to the end. What they will tend to do is a month or two before, they'll get rid of the car. They'll sell it to We Buy Any Car, for example. They'll settle the finance. They will trade it in or they will pay it off. But very rarely will you walk away. With a lease, it's much more common because there's not normally an option to purchase at the end of a lease. So you just run it to term and then give it back. With a PCP, there are a lot more options. Okay, so that's the base of how PCP works. Now, even if we give this car back at the end, like I say, we've still paid £4,913 in interest. So it can be an expensive way to buy a car over 3 years. And that's why I've done some videos lately showing that leasing at the moment is much, much cheaper a lot of the time compared with a PCP. I've got a video I put out recently which is comparing a Honda, I think it was a Nissan Qashqai, personal lease versus a PCP, and it was significantly cheaper to lease, assuming you don't want to buy the car. So that's how a PCP works. What else was I going to talk about? Okay, so on this calculator, you can also do other things. So as well as comparing, you know, how your deposit affects things, how your APR affects things, how your option to purchase fee affects things, you can also do something called voluntary termination. So voluntary termination is a consumer right that everybody has on a regulated finance agreement. And basically, the easiest way to look at it is you take out an agreement, providing you've paid 50% of the entire amount on that agreement, including your deposit that you pay at the beginning and including the charges that are added. Providing you've paid 50% of it, you can technically give the car back. So if you get to a situation, so I had a situation last year where my wife's Smart EQ, we needed to get rid of it because it was a great car, but the range wasn't big enough because we were moving house. We had a situation whereby we'd had it for 2 years. The book price on it was about 8.5 max. Some were even 7.5. We owed 9.5 on it. So if we were to sell it, if we'd have, you know, sold it to We Buy Any Car or any other car buying service, and let's say we got $7,000 for it, we'd have still had to give Mercedes-Benz Financial Services another £2,500. And I've got a video on this on the channel. I'll put a link up to it here, and it goes through the maths. But effectively, it worked out that I was almost at the VT point. I was about £200 off the 50% mark. So all I did was I sent an overpayment of £200 to Mercedes, and then I effectively walked away from it, even though we'd only paid half. So the way you work it out, and this is important, don't get confused again with another misunderstanding of a PCP. Some people think that you can VT halfway through the agreement. So if you've got a 3-year agreement, they think, okay, well, at month 19, after I've paid 18 equal payments, I can walk away. Not true, because yes, that's true normally, give or take a bit, with an HP, because with an HP, you're paying all the capital down across the term. But remember, with a PCP, you start here, you've got this kind of chunk at the end, balloon payment, which you're never paying down over the term, which means you don't normally, depending on what that value is, reach the VT point until probably month 30, month 32, even more on a 3-year agreement. So don't fall into the trap thinking, well, I've had enough of this car, I've only got to make 18 payments across a 3-year term, then I can walk away. Highly, highly unlikely, unless you put a massive deposit in at the beginning, or unless the balloon payment is tiny. So let's just have a look. So in this example, look, I can go over to my calculator and it will show me here, look, that the VT point in this example is, okay, a bit better than I said earlier, but month 26. So after 26 equal payments out of the 35, we could effectively walk away. So if we took this out in January 2025 and assume we'd paid all the payments across the months, we could walk away after 26 payments. But you see, the balloon payment is quite low. It's about 40%. Let's say I make that 50%, 12,000. We wouldn't be able to VT it, look, until after nearly 29 months. So it's just something to be aware of. It's 50% of the total amount on the agreement, including deposit, including charges. Right, so that's the basis of PCP. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about. What was it? Let's have a look at how the APR can make a significant difference. So let's say we have everything the same, and let's say it's 4.9%. So at 4.9%, it would cost us £417.24. At 9.9%, it would cost us $490 in this case, because remember, we've moved the balloon payment from 10,000 to 12,000. So it can make a huge difference. And what I would say is always haggle. Now, you won't be able to haggle on a brand new car because normally, certainly if it's got any incentives behind it from the manufacturer, the APR will be fixed. But with a used car, you can often haggle. Sometimes they might say it's 11.9. So let's say we're looking at a second-hand car and it had an APR of 11.9. That would come out in this case with everything the same, balloon payment of 12,000. That would come out at $519 a month. If you could get that down to 9.9, we'd save £30 a month. So it's always worth asking. There was one other thing, and it keeps going in and out of my brain. What was it? I've forgotten what it was. 9.9. It's completely gone out of my head. 8.9. There was something I was thinking of. This table here, there's an amortization table here. So this will tell you, look, throughout the term, how much interest you're paying each month and how much of the capital you're paying down. And what happens is with these agreements, they're front loaded. So you pay most of the interest at the beginning. And even though your monthly payment is fixed, the amount that is contributed towards interest and capital changes. So if you look here in this example, in month 1, look, out of our, what are we paying? Out of our £476 in this example, £171 is interest. So we're only dropping the capital by 305. But by the time we get to month 13 after a year, we're now contributing 332 capital, so nearly £30 a month more, and £30 a month less in interest. That's why it doesn't often pay to settle an agreement very early on, because we might, in this case, be paying £476 a month. We're only dropping the capital by 300. So sometimes people think, God, I've paid 5 months. Let's take an example. Let's say we've run it for 5 months. So in 5 months, we will have paid, 5 times 476, so about £2,400. But we'll have only paid off about 1,500 in terms of the capital. So you ring up for your settlement figure and go, well, I must have paid at least £2,000 off. And in this case, you've only paid 1,500. So I hope that was useful. for the life of me, I've forgotten. My memory is shocking these days. What I was going to talk about. There was one more thing that I was going to talk about, and it'll come to me as soon as I stop this video. So maybe that's another video for another time. But I hope that was useful. So just remember: is it 1 plus 35? Is it 1 plus 36? Is it 1 plus 47? Is it 1 plus 48? Is it flat rate or is it APR? What is our balloon payment? And where is our VT point? I've just remembered what it is. If you go into a dealer, what I would advise is never tell them what your monthly budget is. Always work from a purchase price. Get the purchase price for as cheaply as you can and get your APR for as cheaply as you can, for as lower as you can. Because if I go in this example, look, if I was to say, okay, let's go back to the original. So let's say it was £10,000. And let's say it's 9.9. Okay, so you say to them, okay, oh no, it's 540. I've only got a budget of 520 a month. Okay. Now, what you could do is you could say, okay, well, I'll knock some off the purchase price. And that's the best way to do it because the cost over the term is lower. But often what might happen, again, I don't know if it happens anymore, but certainly I've had this happen to me before, is a way that you can make the monthly payment cheaper is you can increase the balloon payment at the other end. Now, if you're planning on keeping the car for 3 years and then giving it back and you take good care of the vehicle, this can work. But if not, then effectively it's costing you more money. So look what happens. 540. If I'm the dealer and I say, okay, well, I can change the guaranteed future value or the balloon payment to 11,000 and get it down to 515. So you're going, oh, happy days, brilliant. Now look at what else has changed though. If I put this back to 10,000, the total across the term, let's assume we're going to pay it off, is 29,913. Okay. If I change this to 11,000, and even though my monthly payment has gone down, my total cost has gone up because I am paying more interest because the balloon payment is higher. And just remember, you always pay interest on that balloon payment, whether you clear it or not. So in effect, yes, this is cheaper per month, but if you wanted to own the car at the end, it's cost you more money. So the best way of doing it is saying, okay, keep everything as it was originally and try and haggle £1,000 off the purchase price. Because that gets me down to 507, look, and I'm down to 28,765 across the term. So that is the better way of doing it. Don't tell them what your budget is. Try and get the best purchase price. One final tip I would also say is go into your local dealer, see what they can do. Then go onto CarWow or other price comparison sites, see if you can get a better price from another dealer, and then go back to your local dealer and say, well, look, I've had this price. Forget APRs, forget terms, forget everything. Just say, look, they've given me a purchase price of £24,000. You were saying £25,000. Can you reduce the purchase price? If not, take your business elsewhere and go to the dealer on CarWow. I hope that was useful. Thanks for watching. As I said, if you want a copy of this spreadsheet that I've used today or the salary sacrifice spreadsheet, don't hesitate to send me an email and you'll get details as to how you can get yourself a copy. Until next time, thanks very much for watching. Take care.